We are live from the U.S. Capitol on Capitol Hill as we await President Biden's arrival. At 9 p.m. Eastern, the president will address Congress for the final State of the Union speech in his first term as president. We've already been receiving excerpts of his speech.
And on the issue of abortion access and rights, which will clearly be part of the president's messaging tonight, the president will say in part, quote, "If Americans send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you I will restore Roe versus Wade as the law of the land again."
We're also receiving excerpts from the Republican rebuttal that will be given by Alabama Senator Katie Britt. She plans to go after the president's mental fitness, saying, "Right now, our commander-in-chief is not in command. The free world deserves better than a dithering and diminished leader."
Our Nicole Killian is inside the Capitol building right now, and she's joined by a member of the Democratic leadership, the Minority Whip, Katherine Clark. Nicole, take it away.
Thanks so much, Major and Caitlin, and thank you so much, Madam Whip, for joining us. Talk to us a little bit about tonight and what your expectations are. What more do you want to hear from the president? We obviously heard the message that he will share with respect to protecting abortion access, which is part of the reason you brought this guest here today.
Exactly. And that is the message that not only I'm looking forward to hearing, but the American people are eager to hear, because they understand that a denial of abortion care, of basic health care for women like Amanda and 21 million women who are living under abortion bans in this country, is a denial of fundamental freedom. So this speech tonight is going to be about how we move forward and not backwards. And with reproductive freedom, the GOP and the MAGA extremists have dragged our country and the women of this country backwards. It's the first time we have lost a constitutional right that we had for 50 years. And in doing so, we've created a second class of citizen and a second class of healthcare. And I'm so proud and honored to be here with Amanda Zarowski from Texas, who's the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit because to overturn the Texas ban because of her harrowing experience being denied the care she deserved.
And tell us more about your experience and why you filed suit against the state.
Absolutely. So I was denied an abortion that I needed when I was experiencing a miscarriage. And as a result, I went into septic shock and nearly died. And I know that my story and what happened to me is happening all across the country. And so that's why it's very important to me to speak out, because I'm telling my story, but I'm really telling the story of people across the country who are being denied the health care that they deserve.
And what specifically do you want to hear from the president tonight?
We know his stance on reproductive rights and women's health care, and he's made it very clear that he supports abortion access. And so I'm just really looking forward to hearing more about his plan and his roadmap for how we can restore our freedoms.
That being said, what is possible in this Congress?
They have shown that, especially in the House GOP, this is a do-nothing Congress. But the president's eyes and our eyes are on the future and getting these rights back for families at home now and for our daughters and grandchildren. We are now raising American girls who will have less rights than their mothers and grandmothers had. The president understands that this is so fundamental, and that if the MAGA extremists will come and insert themselves in this most private decision on if and when, and now with the Alabama decision, how to have children and a family, there is no line they won't cross. This decision should have been between Amanda and her doctor, but instead, they decided to come in and control this, scare her doctors with the threat of criminality, jail sentences, and she almost had lost her life because of these laws. And it's just, as she says so eloquently, she is just one voice of many women that she is representing here at the State of the Union tonight.
You mentioned Alabama and, of course, this new law that they now have with respect to IVF protection. That is something that CBS News asked Speaker Mike Johnson about earlier today on CBS Mornings. I wanted you to take a listen to what he told us on that issue.
I think policymakers have to determine how to handle that. We need to look at the ethics surrounding that issue, but it's an important one, and it's some of these issues and some of these questions are unprecedented, and so it takes a lot of thoughtful debate and careful consideration. But we do believe in the sanctity of life, and if you do believe that life begins at conception, it's a really important question to wrestle with. It's not one Congress has dealt with, and it won't be. I think it's a state's issue, and states will have to be handling that.
So he believes this should be an issue left up to the states. What do you make of his response?
Speaker Johnson is one of the members of Congress who signed on to a bill that defines personhood at conception, which directly impacts fertility treatments and IVF. And that is not only did he sign on to that bill, but 184 members of the House GOP have signed on to bills with that definition. This is all part of their march to a national abortion ban. There will be no safe zip code. There will be no safe, doctor's office. And it is not only going to include abortion, but fertility treatments and contraception. When we put up a keep contraception legal bill on the floor of the House, almost 200 Republicans said no. This is the state of the union for women in this country right now. This is the vision of Speaker Johnson and the GOP. It is to take women back and take full control of their reproductive lives.
And do you have any thoughts on this issue as well? I mean, would you like to see Congress take further steps with respect to not only codifying abortion rights into law, but also making sure these IVF treatments are protected?
Absolutely. So as a result of what happened to me, I do have to use IVF in order to conceive in the future. And my husband and I are very fortunate to have 2 frozen embryos that we actually moved out of Texas as a result of the Alabama ruling, because we're terrified that a similar bill could be passed in Texas and our embryos will no longer be safe and they won't be ours to do with what we want. It won't be our choice anymore. And if there is a national abortion ban, to Whip Clark's point, nowhere is safe.
And Whip Clark, I do want to just switch to another issue really quickly, because we know that the president will also talk about the economy, lowering cost, but do you think that message will translate? Because in terms of talking to voters, many of them have told me personally they just aren't feeling the impact that they feel. In some cases, the economy was better under the former president. Some polling, including ours, has showed some of those trend lines as well. How does the president connect tonight with respect to his economic message?
Yeah. The president understands this. He understands that family budgets are still tight, that we have a housing crisis, that groceries are still too high. And what he is going to lay out is not only what he has done, the incredible body of work that he has led as president to lower healthcare costs, to make sure we're addressing housing costs, to allow people to weatherize and reduce their energy costs, bring down their cable bills, make sure they have clean water and access to health care. But he knows that we also have to look to the future and keep going. And he is looking for partners in the GOP to get this work done. And if he can't find them, it is time for us to move people who are in these seats in Congress, who are not only interested in women's equality and access to health care, but are only consumed with chaos within their conference instead of getting to work on these critical issues. So I'm grateful for the president's leadership, and I think he will put it in the strongest terms that his work and his job is yet to be completed, but he sees the American people and holds those kitchen table issues as his priorities.
All right, Madam Whip. Amanda, thank you so much for being with us. Major and Caitlin, back to you.
Nicole Killian, thank you very much.